Welcome to the David Spisak Show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I'm absolutely delighted today because there's been a company that I've been following, I think pretty much since they started, for a lot of reasons. One of the things that fascinated me about them was I know how important communication with clients, how important it is to answer calls quickly, how important it is to get off to a great start with our prospective clients or our clients. And I also love the fact, so they're in a very important part of the business, but they're also the very first company I could recall that had AI attached to their name. Now, AI has become more and more ubiquitous. You're seeing it everywhere. And frankly, like some other things in our industry, guys, I recall whether it's e-commerce or whether it was F&I products, search to a degree, social to a degree. There is oftentimes big promise, but there wasn't always necessarily the results that lived up to those promises or those hypes. One thing I could tell you with absolute certainty, AI is not a fad. AI is not an if. AI is not a situation where it may or may not impact our business. AI is here, it's now, and it absolutely is already impacting businesses in large part thanks to this next company. And this gentleman you're about to hear from is Rich Sands. Rich is the CEO of STELLA Automotive AI. And first and foremost, Rich, I want to just thank you for taking the time to sit down with me for a little bit, and so that I can learn more about you, frankly, about STELLA Automotive AI, and really what's next for your company and how you are impacting or transforming the dealerships that you are working with today. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me on the show. It's an honor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So let's start with this. The very first things I oftentimes love to learn about before we get into retail, before we get into the obvious and talking a little bit about STELLA Automotive AI, the product, the solution, your people, and how you're working with clients. If it's okay, I'd like to kind of rewind the tape a little bit and start out by learning a little bit about you. I'm curious. I always say I've got the curiosity of a 5-year-old, and I'm genuinely curious. How did you get here? I mean, how long have you been with STELLA? Let's start with that.
Oh, good question. I've been here for a little over 2 years now.
2 years. Okay. So take me back. First of all, where were you born? Where did this all start?
Well, I'm a Detroit guy, born and raised, car guy, just north of Detroit. So spent the majority of my life in the outskirts of Detroit working in and around the auto industry.
Boy, how fortuitous is that, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
It's kind of interesting sometimes how where you were literally born. You didn't ask to be born there, right? But just based on you being born in that particular area, it was probably a little bit predestined that you're going to end up somehow, some way in retail auto. Did your parents at some point say, listen, I got to break it to you. I don't know what your dreams are, kid. I don't know if you want to be president or an astronaut or a fashion designer or a world-renowned chef, but you're in Detroit. And this is going to be about the car business. How did that happen?
That's pretty much how it works, right? Especially if you ever try to leave the auto industry, it just pulls you back. Yeah, I was actually raised by two teachers, mother and father, a high school teacher and an elementary school TMI, trainable mentally impaired teacher, mom and dad. I'm one of 3 kids. My older sister's a teacher, younger sister's a chiropractor. And I, was going through my formidable years and understanding and learning about the world, and was working my way through college up at Central Michigan University and ended up working at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. Ran into some really interesting individuals there that were in the auto industry. And as I navigated through college and post-college, I said, I'm surrounded by the auto industry. Everyone I know works in the auto industry. It is the industry where you build the second most expensive thing you'll ever own in your life, other than your home. And what a fascinating world for building modern technology. And at that time, computers were just becoming a thing, onboard computers with vehicles. And it just was a fascinating world to see the internet and cars all kind of combined at one time.
So first of all, thank you for that background. You say that you mentioned it's not easy to get out of the car business. I always hearken back to to Godfather 3, that famous line Pacino says, every time I try to get out, they pull me back in, right? The car business, we don't even let you get close to making a decision to get like you're not going anywhere. So
yeah,
it's
no
crazy
whatsoever. Right? You can try, but you're not going to go very far.
So I'm curious, why did you choose Central Michigan?
Wow.
To go to college?
So interesting story. So when I was growing up, I was a smaller kid, believe it or not, and through freshman, sophomore year in high school.
Could you give some context? How tall are you now?
I'm like maybe almost 6'3".
Holy crap. Okay, because I was a smaller kid, but I'm only 5'10" now. Like you were a smaller kid and somehow you sprouted up into 6'3".
Yeah, but it wasn't until my junior year in high school. And at that time, I wanted to play football. Football's been a passionate sport of mine forever. And they just said it wasn't big enough to play. And, it kind of stuck with me, right? And I'm like, well, just because I'm not big enough doesn't mean I can't. So I ended up growing and kind of filling out my frame a little bit in junior, senior year. And at that point in time, I said, you know what? There's just something inside of me that I need to go prove to see if I can do this or not. And so without an invitation or without anything, I had a couple soccer, like partial scholarships to some smaller schools. But I just had this desire that I wanted to see if I could do it. And so I drove up to Central Michigan University in the middle of the summer, and I attempted to walk on the team as a kicker, believe it or not. Figure my soccer expertise will at least get me on the team. I can figure out from there. Well, about one day into the tryout, I was escorted off the field by the famous Herb Dramedy from Central Michigan, who said, son, you may love football, but a kicker you are not. And so I said, okay. And then before I got off the field, though, I turned to him. I said, you know what, though? I love this sport, coach. Can I have one more shot as a wide receiver? And he goes, well, these kids are really good, but good luck. And there was a line. So I got over in line to be a wide receiver, tried out for the first day, somehow made it through the cut. They probably felt sorry for me. And then for the next 3 days, as they cut the team down, I was just listening and learning as fast and furious as I could. I was speaking with the older wide receivers there. They were giving me all the tricks. They gave me the little tips and tricks, like where you need your feet and your hands, and the ball's going to come in really hot. So all those little tricks kind of paid off. And on the last day, when they posted the roster, I made the team. And it was incredible accomplishment. And, I was just a walk-on again, which means you're going to be the tackling dummy for the year. But for 4 years, I was I played football at Central Michigan University. And the highlight was actually, even though I never played in a game, the team awarded me a varsity letter for, attitude and effort. And so for me, it was a phenomenal stepping stone from fulfilling a passion of mine, college football and football in general, to the next chapter in life.
That's amazing. What a great story. I always endeavor to connect people that are taking the time to listen. I mean, I feel this strong responsibility. If people are kind enough to invest the time to listen, to an episode, to a podcast like this, I want them to be able to walk away with one or two or three things that would benefit them, that would make life better, that they could take back to their office or dealership. And I got to thank you, because we're just early on here, and I think there's so many things that you've already shared from a leadership perspective, from a life perspective. I mean, what a blessing to have two teachers, and I'm sure there were days, Rich, that you're like, you got to be kidding me. Like, seriously, two teachers? So I'm going to go to school all day and I'm going to come home to teachers? Seriously? Right? I mean, there had to be like, holy cow, homework on homework, and the expectations, because a teacher, you can't have your kid be a flunky, for God's sake, if you're a teacher. But what a blessing that was, because the service, that servant mindset that a teacher has, that the fact that they pour so much into kids that they won't even see how the movie turns out, but they do it every day in the hopes that they will have an imprint, that something good's going to come of it, and just their impact on the community. And so, obviously they did a pretty good job if they embedded some things in you that said, hey, everybody's saying I can't do this, but you ended up with a level of belief, core beliefs, confidence, tenacity, and this relentless nature that I don't care whether I play, in the game or not. I'm going to get this done. That's a very cool story, and to be validated through a varsity letter for a kid that never actually played in the game, that's probably relatively unheard of, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It was, at the time you're devastated because you didn't get in the game, but at the same time you realize there's a higher calling, and, credit to my parents, both amazing individuals who were selfless, raising my sisters and I, as you said, servant attitude and everything they've done. Education and family came first with our family. And my mom's the youngest of 9. I'm one of like 45 cousins on one side of the family. So a very large family. That's just everything, right? At the end of the day, and you have, you came from similar minded people who were always do the right thing, honesty, integrity, character. That defines you as a person wherever you go in life. And, instilling those traits in me as a young child, and then through, high school and college, and he really, prepared me for the future. So huge thank you to mom and dad.
Obviously, the great Coach Lombardi, right, had a great saying. You know what the saying is, right? So his God family and the Green Bay Packers. And I noticed you have a sign that you probably borrowed from him to a degree, that sign up there that says faith, family, football. Now, being a Michigan guy, you can't possibly give credit to a Green Bay Packer. That would just be wrong, Rich. But so I get why there's not any green and yellow up there. But obviously, faith, family, and football, obviously, you mentioned your family, your siblings, your mom and dad, and their devotion to you guys and how they've raised you. And obviously the football. So something tells me, based on what's laying there in the background, that football has not left your system.
That's
fair?
Right. Well, fair enough. And diehard Detroit Lion fans, no question about it. But
God bless you.
Quick story. When I was on those cold frozen fields up in Central Michigan on the practice squad and working my way to, third string tight end by my senior year, there was a young kid who was the son of our defensive backs coach. Our defensive backs coach was Denny LaFleur. And this little kid running around could really zing a football for his age. He was probably 8 to 10 years old. And that is none other than Matt LaFleur, head coach of the Green Bay Packers.
That's amazing. You're kidding.
Such a small world, yeah. So hats off to Matt and everything he's doing up in Green Bay. But boy, they play our Lions. Sorry, but it's.
Well, I'm a hardcore football fan. Always have been, and my beloved 49ers obviously got over on you guys a couple of years ago in a game that you should have rightly won. You've honestly, I would say that you'd probably, being a good football fan, would admit they gave that game away.
Sure did. Yeah.
You have a fantastic coach, by the way, but definitely it just shows you that game, how they always call it the game of inches. But sometimes the game of inches is just a couple of decisions. But it's such an extraordinary game. The level of commitment and passion in that game. I was fortunate enough to spend about a dozen years on the board of the 49ers, their nonprofit. And so I got to be there front and center on the field and training camps and a lot of things, and just witnessing what goes in to being a professional football player. They make it look easy a lot of times on TV. Nothing about it is easy, is it?
Nothing's easy, especially preparing your body, mentally and physically for the battles of the year or the season. It comes, this faith family football is where it all comes from. In fact, there's a saying that I used, these trophies here are from youth football, where I coached my sons and ran the largest youth football program in the state of Michigan for almost 14 years. We took the program from having never gone to the playoffs to perennial in the playoffs every year, either contending or winning it. And you get to play at Ford Field. And if you play at Ford Field as a little 7th or 8th grader, you get a small or a big trophy. You get a small trophy if you played and lost, but you get the big trophy if you win. And for these boys, though, that's where I have a saying with my program called 11 is 1. And these boys have grown up with it, where it's 11 individual football players that have 11 different jobs. to do all at the exact same time. And they have to do it for one common goal. And I actually brought that saying here to Stella. We'll get to it in a minute, but 11 is one. It's the same concept. No matter where you are, what you're doing, what your role is, no one's above or below another position. We're all doing this together at the exact same time to accomplish a common goal. And the core elements of faith, family, football are there. The integrity, character, honesty, 100% effort. The number one rule I had for any player is football isn't about being fast or catching a football. It's about attitude and effort. You just show up with the things you can control, attitude and effort, and you're going to find your way out of the football field and play. And then good things will happen. And then from there, they develop the structure to be able to push themselves to the next level and learn a new position and accomplish the desired outcome. So it's interesting how the concepts of football and the dynamics of the sport are so intricately interwoven with life, with relationships, with people, and obviously with business and with work. It's all, in my opinion, all one and all centered around faith.
So a couple things, if it's okay, I unpack. First of all, God bless you for your servant leadership with these kids and whoever was the other parents that took the time out of the day. I mean, let's be honest, none of us as parents have any extra time. None of us. But to take that time to take our kids to a sport, to support them, to watch them in practice, that's one thing. For anybody out there who is a parent and who has taken a kid to a sport, that's a commitment. Day in, day out, week in, week out. Your weekends, your weekends are not your own. You're going to go to their games, sometimes days, nights, weekends, sometimes you travel. But it's a whole entirely different level of commitment when you actually take on coaching. Because the coach is, sometimes those of us that are caretakers of kids or parents of kids, somebody else takes them for us, or my wife takes them, I take them. As a coach, you got to have perfect attendance, right? That's the first line of leadership is you have to show up. But you have to show up. You got to come in prepared. And you got to get these kids ready. You got to deal with all different mindsets. To your point, you don't just have 11 kids in 11 positions. You have 11 different personalities. You have 11 levels of intensity. You have 11 levels of commitment, right? And it's just it's like a Rubik's Cube of people, to be able to take all that on and say, how do I mold and mesh these kids together that maybe didn't know each other 6 or 8 weeks ago and turn them into a team that is all going in one direction. I want to take that, by the way, and jump over to Stella in a minute. But before we do that, first of all, the grades that you coached was what? From?
4th grade through 8th grade.
Okay, so you coached your own kids during that period of time, true?
There were three of our boys.
But you mentioned, I bring this up because you said you did it for 14 years. I pray neither one of your boys was in 4th to 8th grade for 14 years.
No, there was a little overlap, but there was also some years where there were no Sands boys in the program, but I still helped out.
But that's my point. You didn't have Tommy Boy on your team. That was your kid wasn't Tommy Boy in his 7th year of high school, right?
Yeah.
So that means you continued to do that and devote the time and the commitment even when your kids were not in the program.
Yeah. It was good. It was fun. Correct. It was about the program and the kids, and and you probably not to go deep into youth sports, but the whole concept of daddy ball and having your dad be the coach, and then the kid gets all the playing time. Like that was a big no in my program. So those kids had to earn those spots, and the dads weren't even allowed to interact with or coach or set their kids playing time. So the structure was for the coaches, for the parents, for the program, for the kids. It was for the whole thing. Where, we put the 11 is one on the field with a single goal to, yes, we're playing to win, but we were playing to succeed in life. And, putting the right kid at the right position at the right time when we knew that kid needed that play or he needed to be in the game for that role to help build his self-confidence was the best part of the whole experience.
Very cool. Well, listen, thank you for sharing that. I want to very quickly, because I want to save some time for connecting all the dots here in terms of leadership and what you learn and what you can apply from when as you grow up, from your parents, from, your experience with youth sports into what you do now as the leader of STELLA. But before I do that, just quickly, if you could, connect the milestones, mile markers, the dots, if you will, from, you mentioned the very first time you decided you're going to get into the car business. What was your first role, your first job in the car business?
Very first role was running it was basically a production role where I was production fulfillment, running parts for circuit boards for Jabil Circuit, that built overhead components for the OEMs. You may remember Prince Automotive.
Sure.
Yeah. So the early stages there, that was my first job out of college down in Florida, and I was responsible for production, parts control, supply chain management.
And then from there you went to what?
From there, I got involved in technology, and it was clear that technology was taking on a big role. And just to timestamp myself, this is around 1997. And so we started putting together a global quoting package, which led me to Silicon Valley, just to visit and work with tech companies. But they were putting together incredible pieces of software using the internet. And that my experience there led me to be recruited to join what was now called Covison. At the time, it was called Nuco. I was, I think, probably the 7th employee. But it was a conglomeration of Ford, Chrysler, GM, Renault, Nissan, Commerce One, and Oracle that all put people and money into a building and said, okay, go build this new big automotive vertical thing. I was responsible for the purchasing suite, which we were able to send out quote packages to suppliers around the world and have them bid on live auctions for these parts. But we grew the business from $0 to, I think it was $30 million in just a year or so. And that was just an explosive rocket ship of a ride. And that took me from there into a new world of JD Power. I spent almost 10 years at JD Power, running the Power Information Network on the team there. PIN data, you may know it as. This is real-time data coming from car dealers, flowing through JD Power, being deduped and standardized, and then being able to report out on what's happening in real time in automotive retail. Expanded that across the United States, multiple products into China, spent a lot of time in China and Asia growing that product line. And from there, moved into Microsoft. Microsoft was making some big moves in the cloud computing space. So around 2011 or so, went to Microsoft and was working with Fiat and Chrysler and large OEM suppliers at the time to really bring cloud computing to the car. So we did some cool projects with Delphi and Chrysler. And that from there, I ran into some former colleagues of mine at JD Power who were into private equity. And they said, hey, would you mind come joining our private equity firm to go explore working in different fields? And so I worked with manufacturers and tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, and then also worked with some big data shops. And one of those I ran into was, to tie this story back, was one of the individuals I met docking his boat back at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, Jim Anderson, at Urban Science. And so we worked with Jim and, had conversations with him and ultimately joined his board and, spent 5 or 6 years with Jim helping to grow Urban Science. And from there, it was, I connected back with my original, stayed in contact with my original Gary Diltz, who came into JD Power. Gary ran sales and marketing for Chrysler. And then when he came in to run global automotive at JD Power, he retired from there, but I stayed in close contact with him. But he introduced me to Mike Maroney. And when I met Mike the first time in the early 2000s, it was just such a dynamic leader, and he had such incredible stage presence and messaging ability and communication style, and all the things that I was aspiring to lead. And so between Gary and Mike, I had these two mentors, just incredible. And from there, reconnected with Gary and Gary with Mike, and Mike said, you got to talk to Brody Cobb at Presidio Group. And one thing led to another, and they said, we've got this amazing company that's coming together called STELLA. We think you'd be a great person to bring in and lead the team. So, May, June of 2023, I joined STELLA.
What a small world! What a great story, and it's just incredible, isn't it? Like you couldn't possibly look backwards in the rearview mirror and say I could have somehow consciously made those decisions or those dots and ended up here, but yet that's what happened. Yeah. And what a great story. I love how you circled it back to the great Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, and car dealers. And I had the very great fortune, honor to work with Mike Maroney for 8 years as an executive with AutoNation. And, they bought our store back in the year 2000. And just the way life would happen, this wonderful gentleman who was running the region at the time contracted cancer, and they asked me if I would step in, and that's how that ended up working out. But Mike's stage presence and his ability to go into a dealership that maybe they may visit once a year, twice a year, have a handful of conversations with, whatever it might be. But his complete command of that operation, as if he'd lived there 24 hours a day, was just uncanny.
Yeah.
And I remember Mike would ask questions. I'd be sitting in the room. He'd ask questions of our general managers of a store. And I mean, there was never a question that guy asked that he didn't already know the answer to. And I'm just sitting here and he's just going, please answer this right. Please answer this right. Because he already knew the answer. He was asking to see if you knew the answer, for God's sakes. But yeah, he was really like no other in retail automotive, and obviously continues to make a huge impact in the industry. Of course, he's got his son-in-law running his organization now. But Mike, I had the good fortune of interviewing Mike about a year ago. And that was a real honor to have him on. It was a full circle to have him on and talk to him. And one of the things we spoke about, interestingly, Rich, was Stella at that time, because I did have a fascination and I continue to. So why don't we jump over that way? And by the way, Brody Cobb, I got to do a shout out also to the Presidio Group. You talk about an epic organization of just extraordinary individuals from top to bottom. I mean, everybody in that company is such a reflection of Brody. And, if Brody and Keith and his team are involved with something good's about to happen.
Right.
So that's what a cool story.
Yep.
Now, it was Jocelyn, wasn't it Jocelyn early on? Was she
Jocelyn Bodette is the original founder of Stella, correct? And,
would you mind just taking a couple moments just for people that don't know? And like I said, I looked all this up years ago, but one of the things that fascinated me about Jocelyn was that she had a history, a real history of working in AI before anybody said the two letters AI.
Yeah.
Fair?
That's right. Yeah. A lot of credit to Jocelyn. She was the original visionary of the business, came out of all places from intellectual property and be able to extract content from patents, and she was able to basically use large language models and machine learning to do that better and faster.
How long ago?
That was in like 2005, 2007.
Yes, 20 years ago. For everybody listening, 20 years ago, she did this. Am I mistaken? My brain, thank God, I'm going to be 66. Thank God my brain has not epically failed me, but I don't know why. At some point, I recall her having some connection to NASA at one point. No?
She may, I don't know.
Some of the work that she did.
She may have done work for NASA. She did a lot of work for different companies, just extraordinary work where she has a network of people that could, develop and prepare solutions faster, better than anyone else. It was really interesting to watch what she did in the early years.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. So I want to go backwards a little bit. I want to take that 11-1. I want to take what you learned in those lessons in life from coaching these kids, these teams, and how you mentioned, hey, you could bring that and overlay it onto an organization. How has 11-1 served you and the team at Stella?
Sure, 11 as one, and it's what it is.
Or 11 as one.
We all have a role to play, right? And so, in the coaching youth football world, it's about bringing the right player in the right position so that they bring the right attitude and effort. Number 2, they bring the right knowledge of position. And 3, they bring the ability to execute safely. In football, it is a contact sport. You need to be in the right place at the right time, or else your friend next to you could get hurt. So it's all, but you do that together at the same time. So when they hike the ball, you have to read, react, and move all instinctively at the exact same time to accomplish that goal. In business, what we've done is we put the right people in the right roles at the right time, so they can instinctively move and react at the right time to accomplish our common goal. This is a never-ending task. We're always challenging ourselves to improve and get better. And some people want to move from position 2 to position 6, and that's great, and expand their career and their skill sets. And so we've created a culture and an environment where it's a highly competitive, fun place to work, where we're constantly challenging ourselves. There's no shortage of things that we can pick up and run with, and you have the free reign to go do that. We're just making sure that we're all pointing in the right direction. And we've done a great job. We brought in an incredible CFO with Bob Hefner, 18 plus years at JM&A, and SCT as CFO and APCO. People like Courtney Evans, who's on the call here, who came in to lead our marketing efforts. Just really sharp, articulate people that can take a team and run with it. And that's what you're seeing at Stella is the 11 is one concept is, permeated throughout the organization, and everyone wants to be part of a winning championship team. And the way they can do that is not on game day. That's fun. This is Tuesday afternoon. It's freezing cold, snowing sideways, and you got to put in the reps. You got to put in the practice. You got to do the hard work. And when you do all the hard work and you get your operations right, you get the tech, you get the product, sales, marketing, the whole machine working properly. Then when you go out there in front of a customer, it's game day and it's fun. And you bring a lot of value to these customers and to the customers' guests. Our focus at Stella was to flip this entire model upside down and build an experience around the guest experience. And AI is not there to replace people. It's to enable incredible human-to-human connections, faster, more efficient, more timely, more productive, so that you can interact with people more and when and how you wish as a consumer. And that's the future of Stella. That's what we built, and it's great to see it come together.
I love this 11 is one for a lot of reasons, and I appreciate you sharing it and connecting the dots to how that works so well, how it's so applicable in a business environment. And I believe that, any department can leverage that, any dealership can use that, any business can use that approach. You oftentimes see in football, who gets all the press, right? It's Jared Goff, it's the quarterback, right? Next in line, it's going to be a great running back, receiver, perhaps, skill players. And then you're going to have maybe somebody who's a lights out defender. Who is your defender who unfortunately got hurt early in the year?
Eden Hutchinson.
Yeah, what a rock star. Man, that guy is just a beast. But you got those other guys. You got, other people in the starting 22 that don't get much playing time. Don't get much air time. And it's interesting to see in football how it's evolved over the last 5, 8, 10 years. When you look at some of the highest compensated people now, they are edge rushers. They are interior linemen. They're tackles. They're guards. And Trent Williams for the 49ers, one of the greatest ever played, but he's one of the highest comp people. Should be. Doesn't get in the paper, but every one of these people has a role to play, like you say. And it's not that anybody's bigger, better, faster, more important. The machine doesn't work without all 11. It just doesn't. It will never work the same way. So I love that you brought that mentality to the business. Let's talk about the business itself. Stella is how old?
Stella's now approaching 3 years old.
Stella is 3 years in the market?
Yep, 3 years in the market.
Okay, great. How many clients does Stella have today?
We have over 400 dealer groups that have contracted with Stella, and each dealer group has multiple rooftops. So all in, that's almost 1,500 rooftops that are part of those dealer groups.
Wow, that's impressive in just 3 years.
Yeah, and we're expanding into that number, but we're as the dealers decide to deploy and expand.
It doesn't hurt to have Mike Maroney's name,
no,
and his experience and his wisdom, and obviously Brody and Keith. But I think my understanding is you have some other pretty noteworthy dealers that are big fans of Stella. Would you mind naming a couple?
Yeah, sure. Sheehy, Morgan, obviously Ernie, Holman, our friends LaFontaine, Hall Mile One. There's list goes on. In terms of backers with Sewell Automotive Group, who's just one of the best in terms of customer experience. So we've got access to some of the brightest minds in automotive and people, excellent automotive retail operators.
Isn't that incredible when you have a great piece of technology, you have a visionary like Jocelyn was, who brings that to the table. But I have to love the wisdom also, and you got to hand it to Jocelyn, the team, and Brody, everybody. that, you have to sometimes, it's very rare when somebody starts a company and they stick with it where they are the person that was the technology, the innovator, the visionary, but also is the CEO down the line. That's rare, very rare. Steve Jobs is one of those people, rare individuals out there. Larry Ellison's another one. Bill Gates. But you look at some of these people like Bill Gates, at some point they turn the reins over, right, to Steve Ballmer. And same thing at Google. So just because there's a line to where you figure out, okay, I got it to this point, but I know there's so much more there. And to have the humility and the wisdom to say, okay, we're going to bring somebody in here who could take that business, which in this case is you. That's just got to be humbling from your perspective, that the trust and the confidence that everybody has in you to provide the leadership that Stella needs to move forward to that next level.
Well, yeah, thank you. Again, hats off and credit to Jocelyn. She's the visionary of this. But yeah, she had to make the difficult decision to step out and let someone else run the business. And, and since then we're now parted and gone our separate ways, if you will, but we're now fully independent of Telepathy Labs and, moving the company in a new direction, faster and furious. But, Jocelyn and the team has been gracious. She's an incredibly, visionary woman who's done amazing things for not just this company, but other companies as well. She's really a great joy to know as an individual level as well. So again, hats off to her and everything she's created and built. And, my job is to carry that torch forward, make it bigger, brighter, and expand what she started and make this into what its full potential, which is the path that we're on.
Well, let's talk about that. Two of my favorite words, Rich, I think two incredibly powerful words to drop into anybody's brain is what's next. Don't you think, okay, that's great. You got to 10 cars a month, 20 cars a month. You set a record, personal best. You just had the best football game in your life. What's next? It just causes you to look up, right? Look down the road and challenge yourself. When I think about what's next, I'm curious, any new announcements, releases, something great you could share with the listeners, the wonderful people that run dealerships, OEMs, other great innovators, and of course, dealership managers and associates. What can they look forward to that you could announce perhaps with us today?
Sure. Well, first of all, we take our perspective from the dealer principals, the operators, from your guests. We look down the road, we look sideways, we look behind us, we look, head on a swivel, to borrow a football term, but we're looking all around constantly. And what we see is the fact that we started with the most difficult technology there is, which is voice AI, specifically voice. You have to understand tone, inflection, articulation, timing, listening. All of that has to be perfected in order to have a positive language, obviously, multiple languages. All of that has to be accounted for in terms of having an effective conversation. And so we listened to the market, and we know that the inbound, so when customers call a dealership, our voice AI was there to answer those calls. Very difficult to do. We then expanded into text, SMS text, and web chat, so we can do those as well. What we're announcing here is now we're moving into outbound. So we have now developed and built an outbound customer engagement engine. What this is a tool that allows the dealers to interact with their guests when and how the guest wishes to be interacted with, whether that's phone or text or web chat, at the timing and sequence that the AI knows is a good time to interact with them, both the timing, the medium, the messaging. And the goal here is to basically stay in contact and maintain a relationship with your guests, both for long-term retention goals, but also for the personal relationship side. And so we can do this for sales campaigns, service campaigns, recall campaigns, or something as simple as birthday and anniversary. But it's a constant interaction tool so that the guest can interact with the dealership, with the brand in a very professional but simple way, so that the guest says, you know what, I just really enjoy interacting with Stella and that dealership. I'm never going anywhere because they know me, I know them, and it's meaningful to me. That's valuable. So that engine we're launching now. We're excited to bring that to market here.
Is it launching right now?
We'll be launching in the next 30 days. So you're going to see that coming right after the 4th of July with the big press release. So that's a very exciting time frame. It's functional, working right now. We're in final test, but it's a big piece of software and a big piece of AI connectivity. And again, our goal is to empower the human-to-human relationship. And we use tools and technology just like the telephone or the old fax machine or email. Now we're taking it to the next level where AI can power human-to-human interaction in a more meaningful way.
Hey, Rich, is that sales, service, or both?
Both.
Great. Hypothetically, it could do so. It can handle leads for sales.
Absolutely.
For service.
So lead nurturing, lead sales, inbound leads, lead scoring. So we can handle all of that inbound customer
acquisitions.
Lead acquisitions, absolutely.
I mean, acquisition leads, used car acquisition leads.
Correct. New and used. Yep.
Wow. Tremendous. Okay. Well, that's incredibly exciting. So that's going to launch sometime in probably mid to late July.
Correct.
Wonderful. Okay. Let me ask you one other question specifically about STELLA. So as we hear about more and more AI, it just seems like it's proliferating like crazy, on like multiplying like jackrabbits. It's the soup du jour, the technology du jour. Everybody wants to say. I had this joke, at NADA. No offense to the great people at NADA. Love the conference. It's such a wonderful event. But there was so much of it that my joke was when somebody asked where I was at NADA.ai. And if I introduced you, I'd say, hey, I want you to meet my friend Rich.ai. Yeah. You want to grab some coffee.ai? I mean, it's just like AI ad nauseum, right? Sure. And it's one of those things that you hear in life that just comes along every so often that all of a sudden everybody's using it, right? It's interesting because, Brody and his team is extraordinary, and they're so incredibly knowledgeable. Of course, he works with another great organization, FMC, Fraser McCombs, Chase over there, Zach, and that team. I speak to Bill Karras at Holman, and there's just some extraordinary humans, incredibly bright. And I've spoken to them many times. I said, any company that the first thing they want to tell me about is the AI, I'm running. Okay, I want to know if you have a great company. What's your solution? And then AI made it better, strengthened it, right? Like you said. But this has been a core part of your organization really from the jump before anybody was talking about AI. And now that you see more and more people wanting to jump on the bandwagon from different vendors, and there are some, don't get me wrong, there are some folks out there that don't do what you do. There's AI in BDC, in CRMs, there's AI in used car acquisition, there's AI in DMS. Techion's got some AI agents. There's some interesting things out there. But you've been doing this for a long time, background. And I want you to, if you could, share some things that really are unique differentiators from anybody who's looking out there saying, oh, yeah, this person promised they could do telephony with AI. They could answer or score leads AI. What's different about STELLA? Well, what is one or two big differentiators?
Absolutely. The big one is connectivity. So in order to make AI work or any software technology work, you have to be able to make connections. And these connections in our space are called integrations. And the integration with existing dealer systems is critical and not to be overlooked. A lot of these players out there will say they have integrations with these different platforms, but it's really a one-way street. And I call it's like a wholesale integration. It's just a quick, easy, they bought it on the local corner shop just to check the box and say they have it. Well, that's not STELLA. What we did is we did it the hard way. We did it the Tuesday night, snow, sideways, freezing cold. You got to grind this out like my Detroit Lions, right? That's but I'm serious, it's hard. What we have to do is you got to work through these APIs with the technology partner, whether it's a Reynolds or a CDK or a Techion, and you can open up their API and really understand how it works and how to make it better. And that's what we've spent the last 2.5 years doing, is really enhancing these AIs to become certified integrations. And what that does, if you're listening out there, this means that we can do a lot more for your guests. We can do a lot more for your employees. The amount of use cases that we can do and perform or handling transactions increases exponentially. things like book by last known advisor. We can see to client services. We understand RO data, customer pay RO. I mean, the service booking experience, the call routing experience, the outbound customer experience, all critical to these integrations. So spend a lot of money, spend a lot of time. And a lot of these tech partners, to be honest, have actually called us back to see how they can improve their API going forward, because we, by default, and not a part of our strategic plan by any means, but we became pretty good at these integrations. So hats off to the STELLA integration team, amazing individuals that can dive into any new tech integration and make it happen very quickly. So that's by far a key differentiator, where we can provide a great frictionless, which is our goal, frictionless customer experience because of these integrations.
Thank you for sharing that. You may not know this, but for nearly 20 years now, I've been creating technology myself and working with great organizations out there, great innovators out there, to help them with their innovations, their tech solutions, helping them get greater utilization or adoption. I like to say I'm not looking for adoption, I'm looking for addiction.
Yeah.
I want it to where you can't live without this solution. To do that, you have to have those integrations. Otherwise, the reality is oftentimes what we don't think about is you'll get something in and we bring it in based on our expectation, what we thought was going to happen. But then you bring it in and then you find out if you don't have those true integrations, back and forth, core integrations, you always end up having to have workarounds.
That's right.
That's the problem with a lot of the core DMSs, is they're full of a lot of workarounds. If you go the other way, though, in terms of committing to it the way you have, and here's something else for anybody listening. Sometimes these integrations are somewhat straightforward and easy. Sometimes it's a load, right? Because not everybody has formal APIs that are built the way they need to be built. And so it's a tremendous undertaking. What's cool about it is you could take disparate systems, which is one of the core complaints, things dealers lament about. I got 15 different systems being logged into all day long, and I'm trying to utilize this data. They're all proliferating data in silos. But now what you're doing is you're taking these integrations, pulling all that data in to STELLA, so I, as a dealer, can use it. I can deploy it or leverage it any way I wish in a meaningful way to improve the experience for my client, or to make it easier for my people, frankly, to do a great job for their clients, right?
Exactly right. Spot on.
So I mean, that is no small feat. So hats off to you. And then anything else in terms of what's different about it?
You know what we've learned is this is a people business. It's always been a people business, and it's always going to be a people business. So we have to design and build and think around a great guest experience and an employee experience. And to do that means you have to be able to configure these things at the rooftop level. And so we spend a lot of time, and we're very thoughtful about how to design a system that can handle an exceptional amount of configurability, where it could be within the same dealer group, but different by rooftop, different by brand, different by owner operator. And we do things both from the simple as the greeting to more expansive dealer transfer rules, where dealers can set up certain rules for when and how to transfer calls or texts to certain other divisions within the business based on their unique requests. And if you don't have a configurable platform that can do that, then you're not meeting your customer where they want you to be. You're not creating a frictionless guest experience, and that's not what we're about. So we, again, specifically built a high level of integrations and a high level of configurability to really create a phenomenal experience for your guests, your dealerships, and for your employees.
So here's the biggest, for anybody listening, here's my takeaway from that. For somebody who is a self-professed geek, AI is predicated on the data origins. AI, in and of itself, can do little or nothing unless it's got great data to pull from. Give you an example, if you're listening out there, the original form of ChatGPT, the data was what their latest data was up to, I believe, November 2021. So when you got that free version of ChatGPT, you could ask it anything you want, have it help you with any problem, as long as the data that it could use had to be from November 21 or previous. Think about that. So imagine if you're in a real life. I oftentimes, Rich, like to take technology and bring it into a real human kind of a deal. And it's almost like, if I walk into I'm a kid, I'm in my first year of college, and now I'm in a job where I'm expected to be an analyst on Wall Street or an engineer, and they want me to solve a problem, but I only have access in my brain to what I knew as a freshman. Okay, how well would that work? Not so well. So, what happens then, the next level, obviously, is you've got machine learning, and then you had started saying, okay, well, what if we bring in data from multiple places, start to leverage it? Well, that's what you're doing on the integration side. So the first part to me is, how effective is the organization in terms of ingesting data and the right data? But the second part of it is outbound. Right? Now I got it in here. Now what do I do with it? So if I take all that work and I do the integrations, but I have essentially no configuration, I have a gigantic, brilliant, one-size-fits-all. Do I not?
Exactly right. That's right.
Well, it's pointless. It's completely pointless. It's going to be genius for one company and brain damage for another company. So what you're saying is you took on both sides of that very arduous task on the ingestion side and ingesting side, and they, as well as also the outbound, so that if you come into my store, I could literally, to a pretty great degree, consider my culture, my geography, my customer audience, the way that we do things in my store. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly right. Yeah. We want to simplify it down to very, very basic tasks, which is create a great guest experience, extend dealer profitability, get them in, whether it's the sales floor or the showroom floor or the service lane, get them in, and then create a great experience with your guests throughout the experience, from the time you first make contact or they contact you, forever. That doesn't end after the end of the service appointment or after they buy a new car. This is going to be an ongoing relationship that's powered by AI behind the scenes, gently, softly, and appropriately, where it's contained and controlled, and the messaging is spot on and professional, and it just interacts with you when, where, and how you want. That way, your relationship with your dealership will evolve from a potentially negative situation to a very, very positive situation.
I think that's great. Can I jump into a little bit, since we're rolling up to the top of the hour? Can I jump into a speed round?
You bet.
Okay. First car you ever owned?
1984 Chevrolet Chevette. 4-speed stick. This is my dad.
Okay, so you had to be pretty adept with friends and relationships and maybe even dating to get people to hang out with you while you were rolling around big in a Chevette.
It was big time. It was a stick shift, no AC, push button radio, AM.
No AC in Detroit in the summertime. And by the way, a Chevette, for anybody listening, please look it up. Go out and put Chevette. All I want you to look up is the specifications or the dimensions for the driver's seat for a 6'3" person.
Basically sat in the back seat. Yeah, exactly.
I needed the jaws of life to get you out of that thing.
Yeah.
All right. That's pretty cool. All right. Do you have a favorite car at this point?
Always been a fan
car
of
that fascinates you. You just are impressed with right now.
The Ram 1500 has always been a winner in my book.
The Cummins diesel.
If go all in, sure, yes. There's nothing better than that.
No, it's fantastic. Okay, great. A favorite story since you've come to Stella in the last couple of years? Is there just one anecdotal story that just made you smile, where you said, man, I'm really glad I did this. Like, we are making a difference in this industry.
Oh, there's quite a few. I mean, one that pops to my mind is there was a group that we're working with. I'll keep them anonymous, but a group we're working with, and they were having a very difficult time just staying caught up with the phones, response time. It was impacting their bonus pay. It was impacting their morale. We came in and we started deploying Stella across a few of their stores, and they saw the power. And some of these people were almost moved to tears because we created time. And that was the term they used for us. And it was kind of struck with me, like, we created time. At the end of the day, it's the most valuable asset, more than money, more than anything else, time. So be able to create time for people to go do something else, wherever that is, be with their kids, coach youth football, spend time with your guests in the service lane, make an outbound call to a customer. That's what I love, is the fact that we're making this business, this industry better.
It doesn't get better than that. The great Warren Buffett, I remember, famously said in an interview one time, he was being interviewed with Bill Gates, and I can't remember who was actually doing the interview, but he had made mention that he had one of those small day timers in his pocket, and he had kind of flipped through it, and Gates is next to him, and he says, wait. He says, can I see that? He noticed something. Can I see that? And he flips through it. He said, Warren, there's nothing in here. There's no dates in here. And Warren said, listen, he says, I have more money than I can ever use, but I have the same 24 hours as anybody else. I can't make more time. There's not a greater, you ask anybody listening to this, ask anybody you know, whether they're wealthy, whether they're doing fine, whether they're having challenges, whether they've got 0 kids or 5 kids. If I could give you one gift, is there anything greater than giving you the gift of time? I can't think of anything. So that's a pretty cool way to wrap this up. Rich, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to hang out with me and with us, and to share your story, your background. I loved all of it. I loved your background, from your parents to how you were raised, to going to Central Michigan, to having the grit, and the relentlessness to pursue being on a football team that you may never play on, and still going all in every day, taking the lessons from there over to Stella, and the commitment that you and your team have to make a difference in our industry, this industry that I love dearly. I've been in it for 45 years, and I could tell you share my passion as well.
Absolutely.
So,
well, thank you, David. It's been wonderful to go down this exploratory conversation. I loved the comments, the stories, the value. But thank you for all you do for this industry. You're one of the titans in the industry. You're a shining star. And when people listen to your show, they will understand that you are really have your finger on the pulse of this industry. And I thank you for that, because you're bringing the automotive industry into the hearts and the homes of so many people.
Well, I appreciate it very much. It is like your parents, like you with the youth football. That's as close to coaching as I'm going to get, is my passion for this industry, and whatever I can do to have a positive impact. It just really does mean a lot to me. It's I was sharing with another guest, I'm on the Empty My Head Before I'm Dead tour. So I want to do everything I can to take what's in here and hopefully do some good out there. Thank you for joining. For those who took the time to listen, you want to know more about Rich, go to davidspisak.com. You'll find show notes there, some background, some interesting information, and kind of cool. You could learn there how to connect with Rich. And if you want to know more about Stella and that absolutely fascinating company, the technology, and even the newest engine, I think outbound customer engagement engine that Rich spoke of, you could learn of it there. If you want somebody that's in the business, to know more also about, have a better idea of why it matters, what data goes into AI, and then what happens with it, please take the time to share this episode. Always love your comments. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the David Spisak Show. Thanks so much.